Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chad Snow. I'm the news director here at KJZZ. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to our panelists and thanks to our audience online. We have a lot of people who signed up to watch online. So we appreciate everybody taking the time for this. Water is a critically important issue in Arizona. You all know that, or you wouldn't be here. Um, a lot of you submitted questions ahead of time. If you'd like to submit some questions tonight, we have a table back there with a box and some forms and some pencils. So something comes to mind, maybe something the panelists say might jog a thought. We really appreciate the feedback and knowing what concerns the community has in those questions. And that really does help inform our reporting. We've been doing these for years, and every time we do it, it's interesting to see what the questions are and the concerns are. Those are things we try to address as we move forward with our reporting. We've done a lot of reporting on water issues, including a three-part series we did last week, led by tonight's moderator, Camryn Sanchez. You can find all of that water reporting at water.kjzz.org, uh, that series and everything we've ever done on water. And before we get started, I want to thank the sponsor of tonight's event, the Walton Family Foundation. They're a family-led foundation that works to create access to opportunity for people in communities. Their efforts are focused on protecting rivers, like the Colorado River, and oceans and the communities they support. They're also focused on improving K through 12 education and investing in their home region of the Arkansas and Mississippi Delta. And with that, I turn it over to our moderator. Please give a nice hand to Camryn Sanchez.
Hello. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm excited. Water is one of my favorite topics. As a political reporter, I get to cover it sometimes, not all the time. And I'm really happy and excited to have this panel here with us today. We've got some great folks for you. I'm going to ask them to just kind of come down the line and introduce themselves in their own words, starting with, let's start with Kim.
Great. I'm Kim Shonick. I work with the Nature Conservancy here in Arizona. The Nature Conservancy is a global nonprofit working on projects and policies to improve habitat and protect biodiversity. So here in Arizona, we focus a lot on freshwater conservation. How do we protect those places that make Arizona great? And when we think about where we want to go, a lot of times we think we want to go somewhere that's wet. We want to see a river. We want to see a spring. So we want to make sure that those are here for the future. We also do a lot of forest restoration work, and here in the Phoenix area, we have an urban heat program. So we do a lot of different work across the state. We do policy and on-the-ground projects. I am also the chair of the WIFA Water Conservation Grant Fund Committee. So through that program, we're able to think about how do we fund infrastructure in the state and where can we invest to make our state resilient and support our rural and urban communities.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Roy Lewis, and I am the governor of the Gila River Indian Community. I'm in my fourth term now as governor, so I'm the longest serving governor of the Akumina O'odham and Peeposh people. We are active participants on the Colorado River basin negotiations that are going on with things called the post 2026 guidelines, which will effectively, have, the system and plan of cuts and conservation levels for the next 20 years. And, this is probably one of the most significant negotiations that is going on, having directly to deal and affect our great state of Arizona. The Colorado River Basin makes up 7 states, 30 sovereign tribal nations, from Wyoming all the way down here to Arizona, and an international element, as you might know, Mexico as well. So, so there is a lot of meetings going on within the states, with tribal nations, with our federal partnership, with the country of Mexico as well, but also in our own backyard in Arizona. The community is very concerned, that when we start to map out Arizona's water future, that it's done science-based, that it's done in a balanced, responsible way, that if any type of new laws that come out of the state capitol here in Arizona, that it is responsible policy, water policy for all of our futures as well. When we think of agriculture, agriculture, some people think that agriculture is on the chopping block. And agriculture is such an important legacy to all of us in Arizona. I know for the Gila River Indian community, the first peoples of this area since time immemorial. You have all of metropolitan Phoenix that is built upon our direct connection to our ancestors, the Hugum. They were amazing water protectors and engineers, building canals that are conservatively carbon dated over 2,000 years old. As you know, the I-10, which 22 miles of it goes across the Gila River Indian community. We're replacing the bridge over what we call our Yakima, which is the Gila River. And, through a lot of the construction that is going on and our cultural resources, we just found another canal branching off of the Gila River that was carbon dated just recently, just a few months ago, over 2,500 years old. So, this shows that the legacy of water here in Arizona has been, it has a long, proud history as well. And I think what I want to say now and what I'll say at the end is, what we've seen over and over again. Arizonans, when issues such as water come up, we come together and we find solutions. We find practical solutions, but also solutions based on the science as well. And we're at this crossroads right now. Water is probably, and the water issue, and the ongoing drought, this mega drought, the worst drought in over 1,200 years or 1,500 years. This is an existential threat, not only to the Gila River Indian community, but to all of us as Arizonans. Part of my culture and tradition is water. Water is life, and water connects us all. So I'm very excited to participate in this panel and to hear from you from the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lauren Hixson. I'm the Water Resources Manager for the town of Gilbert. Although we're called the town of Gilbert, we're a community of nearly 300,000 people. We're about 292,000. We just became the fourth largest municipality in the state. So we've been rapidly growing for the last 30 years. We're now at 90% built out. We've been able to build out to that capacity because of our 100-year assured water supply rules here in Arizona, building a robust water portfolio that contains 4 main sources: salt and verde supplies, Colorado River supplies, groundwater, and then we reuse 100% of our reclaimed water either through direct use to golf courses and HOAs and to the community around us, or through recharge at various facilities throughout the town. And so through that portfolio, we've been able to grow. We rely on 40% of our supply of Colorado River supply to meet demand, and we're using that fully to meet demand. So when we are looking at Colorado River shortages, that is going to have a direct impact on our community. And so I'll talk a lot tonight about our strategy there, as well as other investments we're making to provide water resiliency for our community. And I'll also say we don't operate in a vacuum. We're part of the community. What Gilbert does matters to the community. What all of us do matters to Arizona. And we all need to work together to come to solutions. So thanks for having me tonight, and I look forward to the conversation.
Good evening. My name is Ron Doba, and first of all, I want to say how happy I am to see the turnout that we have here tonight for folks interested in water in our state. I also want to indicate to you that I'm here representing rural water interests more than anything else, specifically in the northern part of the state. Tonight, I'm representing the Coconino Plateau Watershed Partnership. It's a nonprofit watershed group located out of Flagstaff. We have cities, towns, counties, NGOs, tribes that are all stakeholders in that particular organization. They all come to the table once a month and talk about their water issues. My experience goes back a little further than that in Arizona. I'm currently also the director of the Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association. You may have heard of AMWA. Well, there's 3 water users associations in the state. There's AMWA, NAMWA, and of course SAWA, the Southern Arizona Water Users Association. So I have an opportunity to interact with the larger water suppliers down in the valley area and around Tucson, as well as those rural providers in the northern part of the state. Over the years, I was actually with the city of Flagstaff for 21 years. Did everything from utilities director to public works director to city manager for a period of time. And then I retired, and that didn't last very long. And the next thing I knew, I was over in Bullhead City or Clarkdale, or some of the associations were calling me saying, "You've got some extra time on your hands. Why don't you come and manage this nonprofit?" So I've been doing that now since I think since 2007. So I've been doing it for quite a few years, but it's great because I have a strong interest in water. I see things happening throughout the state. I have an opportunity to sit on the governor's Water Policy Council, and we see things happening in the southern parts of the state in rural Arizona. They're forced to form active management areas down there. There's other areas of the state that are facing groundwater depletion that are probably going to be looked at even closer for subsequent active management areas. Where I'm at in the northern part of the state, we're in pretty good shape for water. But we see this happening and we don't want to get in that position. So we're trying to determine what can we do to protect our water? What can we do for water security in the northern part of the state for all of us that reside there? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I'm really happy to be here tonight to talk to all of you and hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thanks again. And let's start off with some of these questions here. This first one for you all is about specific projects that you're working on. I was wondering if you could each talk a little bit about a project and what it's hoping to achieve when it comes to water policy. And let's mix it up this time and start with Ms. Hendricks. Hixson, sorry. Yes.
Actually, that's not the first time that's happened. So, but anyways, yes. So it's hard for me to not want to dive into all of our Colorado River shortage strategy efforts and projects there. But I wanted to turn to a project that Gilbert's been working on for several years, which is our North Water Treatment Plant expansion. And what that treatment plant does is it treats our salt and verde supplies and meets that 40% of our water supply portfolio that comes from those resources. And back about a little bit less than 10 years ago, we did a conditions assessment on our existing plant, which is 45 million gallons per day, provides a significant amount of water to our community, and is really vital to our surface water and renewable supply portfolio. And the conditions assessment showed that the plant was really not built to last the 50 years that it was originally constructed to operate. It was built in the mid 1990s, and the construction quality was just not up to snuff, and it needed to be rebuilt. And not only that, we had the opportunity as we're evaluating to look at maybe it needs to be expanded as well. And so, right about 2019, 2020 is when that project kicked off. And it's been quite a challenge over the last 5 years, as I'm sure you're sick of hearing about supply chain issues and inflation. But that big project, 60 million gallons per day plant, is now costing the community $700 million to reconstruct. And that's to just use an existing supply that we have available to us. It's not to backfill anything from potential future shortages. It's to just make sure that we're fully utilizing the renewable supplies that are available to us. And so a challenge, you asked about challenges, and something that I think Gilbert has really risen to the challenge in is funding that project. That has not been an easy choice of our town council. It's been a tough road of having to raise rates significantly. We've raised rates last year by 50%, this year by 25%, and we're likely to see another 25% increase again next year. These are not rate increases that are typical of a municipality or utility. You might be seeing something around 6 to 10% on an annual basis. And due to all those pressures, we've had to do that investment. But through all the communication with staff and the educating of our leadership of the importance of this project, we've been able to get that support from town council to do that. And so I think it's a good example of what is to come as we're having to adapt to other shortages, is that it's going to take a lot of investment to make those projects happen, not just from construction, but from the resource cost itself. And it's going to take a lot of our leaders taking those risks and making those hard decisions to have that impact your community in such a way like that. So just wanted to highlight that project, and it'll kind of kick off more of those discussions about what may occur as we see shortages come our way on the Colorado River.
Thank you. That's a really good example. I appreciate that. Governor, same question to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just came down from the state bar, Arizona State Bar. It's at one of our properties on the Sheraton, and they honored my father, the late Rod Lewis, who was dedicated his whole legal career. He was our first attorney for the Gila River Indian community. Dedicated his whole legal career with one of his legal associates, Don Pongres, who's in the audience here. And of course, that culminated in the largest water settlement in U.S. history, the Arizona Water Settlement Act. And so we're celebrating 20 years of that this year. And it's very interesting because when I became governor, and my first year, our water team, we started to see in 2014, 2015, we started to see those early hydrology reports, showing, our groundwater exists, showing less acre feet of water along the Colorado River. So, I'm thinking, okay, my father dedicated his whole career to our water settlement, and here under my watch, potentially, we're facing, declining water rates already. So, I didn't want to face the wrath of my father, my late father. But, my council, we have a 17-member council, and we collectively knew that we had to start planning, even then, 2014, 2015, start to plan for these potential water shortages, less water along the Colorado River, because in our water settlement, we have a significant amount, almost 50% of our water is transported through CAP, through CAWCD, the canals, to the community. And of course, the rest is from our historic river source, the Gila River. But of course, as you know, the Colorado River, what that makes us the largest customer that uses Colorado River water transported through the CAWCD. So this was incumbent on us to start to look at ways where we could start to conserve water. Of course, as governor, I have a growing community, over 24,000 tribal members. So I had to make sure, and still make sure, and this is a priority, to make sure that we have enough water for our on-reservation use. But with that, though, I challenged our community to start to look at ways where we can start to conserve water, where we don't waste even one drop of water, what we call our Atam Shudak. And that goes back, as I said in my earlier comments, to honoring, the legacy that was passed down from our Hugum ancestors, to honor that, to make sure that we did not waste water. We put water to good use. And so we started to look at, through our first 5-year water plan, with our water team, we started to look at conservation projects. We started to stack up potential projects. So that when we started to get into, the DCP in 2017, 2018, and things started to come to a head in regards to, the falling elevation levels in Lake Mead. We started to look at system-wide in the basin. Because of documented science claims or science, direct results having to do with climate change, we started to look at ways to be proactive, and that led us to. I know that we have a representative from USDA, and we developed great partnerships both at the state level but also at the federal level in regards to having projects ready when there was funding opportunities, when there was opportunities such as lining our canals. We have over 200 miles of canals in our community. So I wanted to make sure that, that we would address system loss and loss in regards to the quality of our canals. So we aggressively started to line our canals throughout the community. We also started to look at ways where we could keep more water in Lake Mead to protect the integrity and the elevation levels of the falling levels at Lake Mead. And so this led us to a number of projects. One is our reclaimed water pipeline system, which we are working in concert with Mesa and Chandler as well. So the community saw that, of course, that we're not an island unto ourselves, and we saw the opportunity and the way that we can work with our surrounding municipalities as well. I'm proud of that. I'm so proud of being able to work with Chandler and Mesa, and we're going to be having a meeting tomorrow with Apache Junction as well. So so the community is looking at ways where we can start to bring all of our stakeholders together. We see this as a moral as a moral issue, as being the part of the first nations here in Arizona. We see this as incumbent. I see this as a tribal leader, as the governor of the Gila River Indian community, to model this good behavior, to model conservation efforts. So we looked at, we very aggressively started to look at ways where we can, with some of these amazing projects, we started to put solar panels over our canals to generate energy into our system, but also to protect against evaporation. This is the first of its kind in the Western Hemisphere, and it's a tribe that's doing that. We're looking at regulating reservoirs, and so we're looking at efficiencies across the board. It's making sure that. So for me, I look at things both within our community, but how we model this good behavior and these best practices off our community as well. So, I'm wanting to make sure that we have all the water we need for our on-reservation uses, but I'm challenging our community as well to make sure that we model that behavior, that we don't waste even one molecule of water in our community as well. Before we had our Gila River casinos and our enterprises, we had our farms, and we're modernizing our farms infrastructure as well. It's an amazing revamp of moving our farms into the future, being a future agribusiness that we're going to be proud of. So we're looking at all levels and how we can really be a model for water conservation and being literally shovel ready when these funding projects and opportunities occur. And so we have a number of projects that are going on that are going to save in 10 years. We're going to be able to keep 140 acre feet of water in the next 10 years at Lake Mead because of this.
Thank you. Mr. Doba, same question to you. I'm going to ask the panelists, even though I have like 1,000 more questions, to have a little bit of brevity just so that I can make sure I get to the audience. But please, same question to you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say my stakeholders don't use Colorado River water, so they don't have that. They don't have that issue that they're dealing with the drought and the impacts that we're seeing on it. Mostly groundwater in my area of the state, and to talk about a specific project that we've been working on. That with the 1980 Groundwater Management Act, it identified certain levels below land surface that you had to show you did not draw the water table down below after 100 years of pumping. In active management areas, that's 1,000 feet. Outside of active management areas, it's 1,200 feet. Well, those were arbitrarily set numbers when that act was authorized. Some of the folks that I work with use the Coconino and the Redwall Muav aquifers, and they're drilling wells 2,500 feet and 3,000 feet just to access the water there. So I ask you, does 1,200 feet make sense for a determination of water adequacy after 100 years when you have to drill down so much deeper than that to begin with? So we're trying to come up with some criteria that makes sense for ADWR to use through a rules change that they could make a determination of water adequacy. Our users want water adequacy for economic reasons. They want to be able to show and prove that they're going to have an adequate water supply for 100 years for their own economic well-being and for their own growth up there. So we've been modeling groundwater now for, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years with the help of grants from Reclamation and running different scenarios to try and see what the impacts would be if we change that criteria from 1,200 feet to criteria such as a percent of saturation of the aquifer, 50%, 75%, 90%, graduated declines in water table every year for 100 years. And what my stakeholders are interested in is not only is it going to impact adjacent groundwater users, is it going to impact uh, stream flows, spring flows, different surface water flows, because they have a definite interest in that. And currently, ADWR does not take that into consideration when they determine adequacy. They don't take it into consideration because in their rules that they have to follow, it's not there. So, but in order for my folks to make a recommendation, it's going to have to show that it's going to have a negligible impact on our environmental water flows up there. Up to this date, we just completed our final phase of our modeling work, and I'm happy to say that we're very pleased with the model. That's the good news. It's been fine-tuned. It's been calibrated. They're using the right river flows or stream flow packages with it where they need to. The bad news is we haven't hit that criteria yet that we can, that we can go to the director of ADWR and say, this is what our stakeholders are recommending for a rules change. We've gone very conservative. We've gone to a 90% level of saturation in the aquifer, and we're still showing significant depletion of flows in the Little Colorado River, like above 30% depletion after 100 years. And it's easy to say that's 100 years off, but who knows what else is going to happen during that period of time. And we're just trying to use science to come up with some criteria that's not going to be arbitrarily set like it was set when the 1980 Groundwater Management Act was passed. So that's the one project I wanted to share with you.
Thank you. I love data. Last but not least, Ms. Schoener.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to just share a project example from the Verde River Basin and highlight a few of the things that we're working on where agriculture and conservation have so many similar objectives and how we're working to ensure that agriculture continues to be part of the landscape. So within the Verde watershed, agriculture is a very large water user. Most of that water use is coming from surface water uses in the Verde. The Verde also flows downstream into Horseshoe and Bartlett reservoirs and then contributes to the water supply for the Phoenix metro area. So it's an important water supply, and those folks that are living up in the basin are the people that can steward and share that water. So the Conservancy has been working with the Verde Ditch Company, which is the largest ditch company up there. It's an 18-mile long ditch. It does not have a lot of modern infrastructure. Governor Lewis mentioned, the condition of the canals on their lands, and very similarly throughout the Verde, these are dirt line systems. They're pushing up dirt and sediment and rocks, and you hope not old cars, to create diversion structures to push water into these ditches and running it out to deliver to their farms. Their objective is not to deliver water as efficiently as possible. Their objective is to make sure their users get water. Folks are not willing to pay extremely high rates to invest in those systems to modernize them, nor do they have enough economic returns from their agricultural interest to go ahead and invest their own personal funds into that. And so there's not a lot of incentive for them to manage those waters. We touched a little bit with Governor Lewis's talk on the tribal water settlement piece and how that fits into this overall water management in Arizona. But one really critical thing in the Verde is the adjudication. So throughout the Gila watershed, surface water users do not know how much water are they allowed to take. So when I, as a conservation organization, I sit down with a ditch company and I say, hey, I think you should take a little less water, Their answer is how much less? What am I allowed to take? We have not been through the legal process that says this is how much water you're allowed to take. And there's been a lot of incentive for many years to take as much water as you can. And perhaps that creates this basis of a right. And so there has been a very negative kind of draw to take a lot of water because that's how you can create a water right in the future. So that adjudication process is absolutely critical that it's resolved at some point and continues to move forward. So we need to kind of continue to invest in that system and really understand how much water are people allowed to use. But we've been very fortunate with the Verde Ditch Company that they've said, hey, yes, we want to be efficient. We're willing to do these improvements, but we need to have funding to be able to do that. So we were fortunate to have $2.2 million this year to invest in piping over 6,000 feet of the Verde Ditch. That project saves just over 1,000 acre feet of diversion. So that's a really great project that puts more water directly back in the Verde River, allows it to stay there and benefit the habitats, while we're also able to deliver all of the water to the farmers that rely on that water. So just simply by lining and piping that canal, we're able to water those farms. We're allowed to leave water in the river, which creates a lot of community benefits. The town of Camp Verde, so this is just north of Phoenix. If you've driven up the I-17, you drove over a bridge and maybe you looked down and you didn't see the river. It's down there, I promise. It's not huge there, but it's quite a nice place to go. You can go kayaking and boating, and projects like this put more water in the river so that you can do more of that recreation, which allows the community to continue to develop alternative economic development. There's a great report by Audubon looking at the economic importance of these systems. So if you're wondering, like, how much does that really matter in these small rural communities? Having this tourism is a really important component of their economy, and they really want to continue to build that part of their economy. So these projects where we can protect ag, build economic development around recreation, have a lot of community benefits. So I just want to also highlight the funding that went into that project. Was Water Infrastructure Finance Authority Conservation Grant Fund. So that is money that was awarded to the Natural Resource Conservation District for that piping project, and then private funding from the Nina Mason Pulliam Charitable Trust, as well as several corporations to allow that project to happen. So that's one example of some of the work that's happening and how agriculture is stepping up to the table and saying, hey, yeah, we're big water users. We want to be efficient. How can you help us get resources to be able to be efficient and find those paths? That work is complemented by the work that the town is doing. So the town of Camp Verde is looking at how do we more effectively recharge and use our effluent sources? How do we manage our stormwater more effectively? How do we manage our groundwater depletion? So within the Verde community, there's a lot of folks looking at how do we make this system better? How do we make it sustainable? Just to kind of build on Ron's comment about the model, we're also able to look at modeling tools to say how much benefit does this have? And how will we be able to protect these savings in the future? So we've partnered with the Yavapai Apache Nation on a groundwater and surface water model to actually evaluate how these projects play out in the long term. So I'll end there, but I think just really highlighting the importance of rural communities being able to implement projects if they have funding available, and the importance of continuing to have funding available.
Thank you. For this one, I'm going to start with Governor Lewis, and I'm going to ask you something that I know the audience, at least based on the questions they sent in, is interested in, as well as myself. What is on the chopping block? You know, if there are cuts, whether it's through the Colorado River negotiations or something else, you know, what are residents going to see? What could potentially change in our day-to-day lives?
Right. Well, definitely there is going to be a new normal along the Colorado River. That is something that I think is generally accepted in our negotiations. And I think for Arizona, we are in a tenuous situation. We have junior water rights to California, right? And there's a long history that goes back there. But I think for Arizona, when we start to look at and ag, is brought up, the agricultural sector, tribal water rights, growth. We have to look at ways where there is no silver bullet here, right? We have to look at ways where Arizona, where we look at opportunities to conserve both large and small, like efficient, water, shower spouts, watering your lawns less. All of those small but very important water conservation practices, you know, those, those mean something. Those save water. There's, I think the state of Nevada, I think that shows that as well. They were, their best practices, I think, bear that out. But I think at the same time, we have to look at ways where those, especially within Arizona, when we talk about ag and those that have senior water rights, they want to see that our towns and our major cities are doing their part as well before ag starts to look at potentially making significant cuts. For the Gila River Indian community, I just go back to us. We're trying to model that good behavior. We're trying to look at ways where we conserve. Because we conserve. I think there are three challenges, that Arizona faces. One is making sure that we have enough water for our existing economy and homes and businesses, but also making sure that we have enough for our future growth as well. Because I think, we're in an exciting time. We have, a lot of high tech businesses that are coming through, and making just strong investments in the state as well. We want to continue that. So we have to make sure that we have enough water for our continued growth in the state, but also there will be cuts in the future in post 2026. How deep those are, how significant those are, we don't know yet. That goes back to the new normal. And I think for the Gila River Indian community, we want to make sure that those cuts are principled, that they're based on science, and that not one sector has to shoulder that burden, that they have to be balanced. And so with that, we have to look at ways, innovative ways, where we can start to save water for those potential cuts as well, whether it's with groundwater, whether it's with developing innovative innovative policies and projects to start to save water, to build up a water supply in Arizona, to address those potential cuts in the post 2026 guidelines along the Colorado River that will directly affect Arizona.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Lauren Hixson.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a lot what Governor Lewis said about the future is going to be less Colorado River water. We don't know exactly how much less, but we know it's going to be less. And so Gilbert has adopted a three-pronged strategy for addressing those challenges: operational resiliency, long-term portfolio sustainability, and water conservation and efficiency. So operational resiliency is really, let's meet demand with whatever drop of water we have available. And that's not necessarily the most sustainable way. And really what we're doing with operational resiliency right now is drilling more wells. We're drilling 7 new additional wells to access previously stored water in our aquifer to help in the short term. The aquifer is a short-term source for this issue with the Colorado River. It's not a long-term approach. I like to make analogies kind of with personal finance a little bit with that. Your long-term savings account, you don't rely on that for your day-to-day expenses. You rely on your salary, and our salaries are renewable water supplies. And so we don't want to turn to our long-term savings when our salary is cut to meet our existing demands, our existing expenses, right? And so, but the analogy does fall short, because unlike a bank account, when you have more money, you can put that back in the savings account. Unfortunately, the aquifer doesn't work that way. The more you pull out, the less capacity it has to store that water again in the future. That storage capacity shrinks. And so we don't want to be sucking that dry too quickly. So that's one methodology that we're doing with operational resiliency. We do have a good, robust aquifer underneath, the town of Gilbert. But again, it can't be used too quickly. It's part of our long-term approach. We want it to last several hundred years if possible. And so again, with that, we're making some strategic partnerships with other communities. We've entered into an agreement with the city of Tucson, as well as Queen Creek, to also find ways to work together to utilize different resources, move water around in order to shore one another up. And so we want to see that not only on the municipal level, but with other stakeholders throughout the community, some of those that Governor Lewis mentioned. So that's operational resiliency. Second is long-term portfolio sustainability. So we are investigating ways to look into future water supplies. We're a partner in the Verde River Sediment Mitigation Project, which is AKA expanding Bartlett Dam to hold more water from the Verde River. A couple years ago, we had significant flows on the Verde River system, and SRP had to spill, I think, about 600,000 acre feet from their river system because they didn't have the storage capacity. I'm going to take a drink real quick. See, water is very important, right? And then, so another thing with long-term portfolio sustainability is we're increasing recharge capacity within our community. I've mentioned we already have several recharge sites. Our riparian preserve doesn't have adequate capacity to meet all of the supply we have to recharge all the water we have available. And so we were able to get nearly $14 million in federal funding for that project by leaving some water in Lake Mead over the next 10 years. So although we're going to have to take that cut in our Colorado River supply, it's investing in long-term portfolio sustainability by increasing recharge. And then lastly, water conservation and efficiency. How do we reduce demand so that our water supply and demand are in balance? So we've been doing townwide AMI, which is automated metering infrastructure, and that gives our customers real-time data on their water use. So you'd be surprised how many water leaks are out there in the community on the customer side. And without that hourly data, you don't know that your water use never goes to zero. So we've had some businesses we've outreached to that have had water leaks for over 6 years. At least that's the data we have, of 150 to 450 gallons per hour for 6 years. And we normally have, if there's a big jump in water use from one month to another, we'll notify a customer, but you don't know if that's what you're normally paying. You don't notice a change. So it's really important to have this technology to help our community make better choices in how they behave with their own water use. So that's our three-pronged approach: operational resiliency, long-term portfolio sustainability, and water conservation and efficiency. But it's going to take everyone being a part of adapting to the new normal of less Colorado River water.
Oh, thank you. Now, Mr. Doba, I think your answer might be a little bit different because you mentioned Colorado River water isn't as much of a thing with your partnership, but maybe in the context of groundwater, if there are cuts, can you talk about what the new normal could look like for people?
Sure, I'd be happy to try and address that in from a little different perspective up there. We're fortunate in the northern part of the state. We do have a lot of water available, more groundwater than anything else. Our surface water supplies are pretty minimal, especially around Flagstaff, Upper Lake Mary. It's been there a long time. It's very undependable. It depends on the snowpack we get every winter, whether it's going to fill up or not. So we've always had to build a kind of a dual water resource system. One, if you have the lake with surface water available, and another one when it's not going to be available at all during the year. So there's a lot of dependence on groundwater, and there's a significant amount of groundwater there, although it may not necessarily be located where you need it. Flagstaff, as an example, has several well fields. Some of the well fields are starting to show declining groundwater levels in them around Flagstaff. And fortunately, a few years ago, they were very proactive in looking at their water resource portfolio. They purchased a ranch approximately 40 miles east of Flagstaff called Red Gap Ranch, anticipating that one of these days in the future, it could be used for additional groundwater out there if they needed it, so they could manage their groundwater pumping. By managing their pumping, what I'm really saying is the Lake Mary well field, let's leave it off for a year. Let's get our groundwater resources from the Woody Mountain well field or from Red Gap Ranch, or use more interbasin water or something like that. So they've got a very diverse portfolio. So that gives them the ability to do some management with what they have. The ranch is expensive. It's going to be expensive to develop. It didn't cost that much when they bought it, but they're probably looking at $400 to $500 million to build a pipeline for 40 miles, booster stations, storage tanks, everything it's going to take to move that water to Flagstaff. Plus, they have to lift it 2,000 feet, which is no small task. So instead of having to dig deep wells at Flagstaff, they're going to a much lower elevation where the water's much closer to land surface, but they still have to lift it another 2,000 feet to get it to the city of Flagstaff. So the cost of water is going to be going up. That's the one thing that I think is going to be changing in the rural water areas. So it's not just for the metropolitan areas. We're going to be seeing that all over the state as we have to make changes to our system, as we have to treat for new contaminants that we didn't have to treat for before. That's an unbelievable additional cost that some of the communities are having to bear as a result of PFAS that have come out and other contaminants.
Can you give a mini definition of PFAS?
No, I can't.
Please.
I'm sure somebody else here can, though.
Forever chemicals?
Yes, forever. That's the best definition I think
I'll
that you can use is the forever chemicals. But no, the cost is going to be going up. The conservation programs are very good in most of the water providers' systems that I work with. Flagstaff, for example, their per capita water use is down well below 100 gallons per day per capita, which is real good. It took a lot to get them down there, but they're not satisfied with that. They're going to continue with a strong conservation program, just as the other communities that are our member organizations, such as Camp Verde, Cottonwood, Sedona. Although Sedona doesn't have their own water system, Arizona Water Company provides their water. They're both active participants and stakeholders in our organizations up there. So we're going to see the costs go up. That's going to be one of the changes. The technology's there, but it's not cheap.
It's an unfortunate and real change. Ms. Jonick?
I'll push that button. The environment is always the junior use within a system. We don't have a strong recognition of in-stream flow rights within Arizona and protection of water for the environment. And so when we think about how will we protect our freshwater systems into the future, that has to be in partnerships with our municipalities, with our rural water providers. And of course, that's the right way to do it, right? If we're trying to regulate a solution, we're not going to get to a place where people win and nature wins. We're going to end up in conflict. And so for the Conservancy, we really focus on how do we make sure that there are water supplies for rural communities as well as water supply for nature. So I wanted to highlight a project in southern Arizona. And I think, this question is kind of like, what's going to get cut? And I think what got cut for rural Arizona is this option of getting Colorado River water, right? Somewhere in the last decade, every small town had to stop talking about when they got their Colorado River water. I've been in Arizona for 16 years. When I first started going to water meetings, that's what I always heard. We don't have a problem. We're going to get Colorado River water. So I think that was the best cut that could happen to rural Arizona, right? Was that acknowledgement that you're going to have to figure out your solution in your own place. So what have communities been doing? And so Ron highlighted some of those that have been happening up on the Plateau. In southern Arizona, there's some really great partnerships with the city of Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca looking at how do we utilize effluent to benefit the river. So their groundwater pumping is definitely creating a cone of depression and drawing down water that has quite a few impacts. But what they've also done is strategically place their effluent where it can recharge and benefit the San Pedro River. So the sections of the river where we see the most stable flow and the highest quality of vegetation are connected to that recharge component. And so that's a really important thing to think about with rural communities. Where does that effluent go? Most communities evaporate their effluent. So here we are talking about this water crisis and this water challenge. And then we are evaporating effluent because that's the lowest cost alternative if you are a rural community. So projects like that where we can assign a benefit and really understand how can that benefit the community as a whole. So I just wanted to highlight that I think is where from the environment and the conservation perspective is how do we protect these places? How do we find local solutions? Some other things that we've worked on are, protecting sensitive areas from pumping, conservation easements that ensure that those places will no longer be available for groundwater development, housing developments. They'll remain farms and ranches forever. And that can help protect aquifers and ensure long-term planning for communities, and then protect those sensitive resources as well. So yeah, I think that's probably enough of an answer.
Thank you very much. This next question is kind of a continuation of this line of questioning, but I'm going to throw it out there for whoever wants to answer. And it's just, how can individuals help the situation, whether it's audience members or, taking faster showers? Do little things like that matter when there's giant mega farms or TSMC that use millions of gallons of water? What should we be doing differently? Yeah.
I'll go ahead and answer that. It absolutely matters. Gilbert's total Colorado River water allocations 27,000 acre feet. All of Arizona's allocations 2.8 million acre feet. Even if Gilbert stopped using water, we wouldn't solve the water issues on the Colorado River. But when you look on the micro level for Gilbert, about 60 to 70% of our water use is outdoors. That means we don't get that water back in the sewer system. We don't get to reclaim that water. We don't get to reuse it and recharge it and preserve our aquifer and preserve our sustainability. And so of that 60 to 70%, if you have an irrigation system in your backyard, you probably are overwatering by maybe 50% or more. We don't do necessarily a good job of watering the plants we already have in our backyard efficiently. And so, Gilbert has adopted a landscape water budget program that has helped HOAs and bigger water users save millions of gallons each year by providing them the tools to see their real-time water use month by month and compare it to a water budget. But I would challenge that even individuals in your own backyard, you can come up with your own water budget and really understand how much water am I using for my pool, for my trees, for my cactus. Even like you might have a drip emitter you're not even aware of that's just watering the ground and not doing anything efficiently. And that matters. If Gilbert could reduce our outdoor water use 10%, 20%, that just secures our future for further into the future. Doesn't make us have to use that groundwater to offset demand when we see surface water shortages. And so as far as your showers go, yes, buy the low flow shower heads, buy the low flow toilets, buy the efficient washing machines. And that's really important for our industry, that's what's available to you when you go to Home Depot. But I really would challenge you to find out what you're using outdoors and understand what your water budget really should be. And then I'd further challenge you to maybe change out one of those high water use plants that's not really doing anything for you and get rid of it and put something native out there. So that's going to be a change for a lot of Gilbert residents. We've had more of a lush landscape look for a long time. And so just kind of a challenge to our water future is not what our water past has been. So we're going to have to adapt.
So it's Gilbert's fault.
No.
I'm just kidding.
27,000 acre feet out of how many millions?
Does anybody else want to take this one as well?
I guess I would just add, and I think everyone here today has done this step clearly, is learn about where your water comes from, learn about water policy, and support elected officials that are making wise water choices. And I think that's a really important thing that we can all do. It means hard choices. When we're talking about there's less water in the future, that means there are going to be hard choices about what does that mean for growth? What does that mean for development? Where I live, we're a rural community. I live in Chino Valley. We really like our 1 to 5 acre lots. This is a very inefficient way to deliver water. So understanding the importance of infill and why that might be a choice that your community is making, understanding the importance of high density in these places that we're developing, and being able to make those choices about why should you pay for a sewer bill when you can have a septic tank? Why should you be on a community water supply when you could have a well in your backyard? These shared infrastructure systems really provide a lot of water savings overall and are very important when we think about how water gets developed in what Arizona calls rural. I lived in a county, we had 300 people. That was very rural. I don't think of Prescott or Flagstaff as rural. And yet in a lot of our conversations in Arizona, we call them rural. We think of them as rural These are places where we do need to accept that we're not all going to have 3 to 5 acres and all of our personal freedoms and have water into the future. So I think just really understanding how water management can happen at a scale and how that translates to land use choices and how your elected leaders are trying to make those choices and those trade-offs.
Thank you. Or other panelists want to respond to this one before we move on? Okay.
Well, first of all, I agree with everything that's just been said. And I just want to make a comment. I lived for a number of years in the valley here before I went back up to Flagstaff. And in a particular community that I lived, and I'm not going to say any names, but the CCNRs required a certain percentage of your front yard to be turf and to be watered. And effluent water was not available, treated effluent, to do that. It had to be potable water. With that, I'm going to leave that there, and hopefully that community is approaching it differently now. But in addition to the participation in the water conservation efforts and so forth, the citizens and the public need to be involved in the planning process for water resources because it can get controversial sometimes, and they need to ask questions, and they need to voice their concerns to the people who are doing the planning, and they need to listen also. But it's not just the citizens and the public, the water providers need to do that too. They need to listen to these folks that are bringing these concerns to the table so that they can evaluate them and make sure that, should this be involved in our planning process. Flagstaff's going through some controversy over developing this ranch I was referring to earlier because of the cost. There's some other alternatives that may be looked at, and one of those could be direct potable reuse. There's not a lot of communities in the state of Arizona that are currently doing that, direct potable reuse, but it can be done with the right treatment processes. And it's going to be a subject of debate, I think, for a number of years up there. But it's important that that's on the table and people listen to one another's rationale when they start to talk about that.
Thank you. Governor Lewis, I do have a question from the audience here that we got before we started that's particularly for you, I think, or I'd like to make it for you. On the Colorado River issue, will the state's water rights supersede tribal rights?
No, no. The especially our water rights and all tribal water rights, that's a trust responsibility between the federal government and tribes. Um, you know, uh, the Arizona Water Settlement Act, which established our water rights, that is federal law. So for the tribes along the Colorado River and throughout the basin, I know that is the 30 tribal nations. I know they are you know we are unified in that belief and that legal reality that that this is uh, sacrosanct. It is the federal trust responsibility that is backed up, with those that have established water rights, that is backed up by federal law. Now you see a significant water settlements that are going through Congress right now, the Navajo and the Hopi tribe, and that in and of itself is, you have the Navajo Nation, which is one of the largest tribal nations, spans of course 4 states, and the Hopi tribe, which is, just their infrastructure needs, their access to clean running water is so dire, that this is long overdue, and the community supports that water settlement moving forward. Hopefully in this Congress, hopefully that water settlement will pass. But that will, I think, provide some stability to the region once those water settlements have been approved. And so just going back, so that's that is the long and the short of it in regards to our view of our long fought water settlement.
All right, this is a question that's just for me. I want Mr. Doba to answer. Can you talk just very briefly about AMAs and what that acronym is and what parts of the state are affected by it and whether or not there's going to be new ones?
active management areas,
Yeah.
AMAs. I'm sure there are going to be some new ones. I would also make a comment from my observation is that an active management area may not be the silver bullet in all cases to resolving an area's water problems. We have existing active management areas in the state that are just not working the way they were meant to work for a number of reasons, and that's not blaming municipal water providers or anything like that, but it's just the way growth has been occurring, mostly outside of the boundaries of some of these municipal water providers. So from that perspective, they might not be the answer for everything. The same with INAs, just for the fact that some areas like where I'm from, we don't have a lot of agriculture up there, so it's just not a concern in around the Flagstaff area. There's probably more ag that takes place on the reservation land, but you know those are sovereign nations. They're they're not in the in the direct Flagstaff area or the Verde Valley or so forth. So certainly there's a potential for more AMAs in the future. I would like to see a tool be developed, and there have been folks that have been working on this for years now, trying to come up with some sort of a management tool that can be used outside of active management areas in rural Arizona to manage their groundwater use, because right now there is absolutely nothing. If you have land in rural Arizona, you can drill a well and you can pump as much water as you want to out of that well. That's just the way it is right now. And what we've been trying to do is to put together some some kind of a tool that can be used out there. And for various reasons, mainly opposing interests, we haven't been successful at that. It would certainly be nice if we could come up with something though in the future so that some of these areas can put some sort of a management uh, uh, area in place. I don't care what you call it, an RMA, a basin management area, or whatever, to protect their groundwater supplies, because we don't have anything like that right now. And another issue with AMAs and INAs, the criteria that's used now to form them, uh, you have to have a problem before you can form an AMA. You have to show you've got declining groundwater levels or water quality issues as a result of groundwater pumping. That's kind of late in the game to be forming an active management area when you've been you've been getting in trouble for so many years. Now all of a sudden you're going to form something and you're going to get out of trouble right away. I don't think that's going to happen. It would be nice to have a tool that we could put in place to protect what we have so we don't get in these poor conditions when it comes to groundwater.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason I'm kind of opening this can of worms is because we've been talking a bit about groundwater, and I wanted to sort of bring up the tools in the toolbox and perhaps what the panelists would like to see created in terms of what we can do in terms of groundwater conservation. Ms. Schoenig, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think, there's a wide range of tools. It's obviously been an ongoing conversation at the statewide level. But I do think it has to start with understanding what the current uses are and having a way to allow for additional use. In some basins, maybe that means more water can be used, like in Ron's example of if you're not in a crisis, maybe there's a little more water that can be used. If you are in a crisis, how do you stop that use and then allow transfers in between different types of use? So I think that's really important to start to figure out how to understand. How do we make sure we space wells so that we're not creating problems for our neighbor? So if you have a well and you've been going along pretty great and then somebody else comes in next door and drills a very deep well, how are they allowed to impact you? What are the rules around that? And I think we need to establish that. I don't think it's my role to say what those right rules are, but I think it's something really important for the state to find a solution for, what are we okay with in these rural basins? How can we allow groundwater uses to move from one use to another use? How can surface water rights play into that in these places where we do have surface water, and have some flexibility into that?
I want to put this one to you as well, Ms. Hixson. I know Gilbert's very proactive on conservation. What would you like to see available in your toolbox for that?
Yeah, I think as Ron has mentioned, the Phoenix area is in an active management area. So the AMA was formed in 1980 because there was large groundwater depletions occurring, subsidence occurring where the groundwater or the ground is literally collapsing, fissures occurring, etc. And so there's been 45 years of robust groundwater management. Yes, we're not necessarily meeting all the goals of those original regulations of what's called safe yield, pumping, matching what we're recharging, right? Having a safe yield of production, not over pumping the aquifer. And so I think the biggest thing is that we need to protect those existing regulations that are in place. A couple years ago, 2023, ADWR came out with the latest groundwater model showing that basically all growth on groundwater needed to stop because all the groundwater had been allocated. But since then, we've been just dealing with a lot of different legislative proposals to reopen development on groundwater. And while some of those have been good creative solutions and negotiations, really where we're at now is we really need to not allow that. We need to make the hard decision that this is where we're at. We've allocated the groundwater, and that's going to protect existing users. Gilbert has a portion of our portfolio made up of groundwater. We're needing to rely on that as we see cuts to the Colorado. Other municipalities throughout the region are also needing to do that. We've recharged a lot of water. Essentially, if you reduce those regulations and say, okay, instead of 100-year assured water supply, it's 50 years, well, you're going to take water from those who already have that water to meet their existing demands in order to serve those new developments. And so I think we don't necessarily need new regulations. We just need to protect what's already been in place and really uphold those robust management tools that have been in place. And then, as far as rural goes, it does sound like there needs to be unique tools that really reflect the science and the true regulation or true actual conditions of what's happening out there. So what's in place for Phoenix and some of the more alluvial groundwater basins is working. We just need to uphold what we have in place.
Thank you. Governor Lewis, to you as well. Anything that you would like to have in your toolbox for water conservation?
Well, I think as we all know, we have three major sources of water in Arizona. We have the Colorado River, we have surface water within the state of Arizona, and we have groundwater. And so, so we look at, just I think we're talking about, I think, two main themes here, two main challenges, both along the Colorado River and our groundwater. And how do we address those, because those do affect each other. There are these important connections there, and I mean, politically, hydrologically, science, and what and policy driven as well. I think for Arizona, I think what I see in regards to augmentation is looking at opportunities for new storage and also desal projects as well. I think that's going to be critical moving forward. Now, on the flip side, looking at responsible policy for groundwater as well, and the recent passage, which the community supports, the Ag to Urban bill. I think that's a great example. That was just passed and I believe signed into law just recently, just in days ago. And I think that's based on science. It's based on being proactive and looking forward as well. Again, this is not the end all. The silver bullet, but this is responsible policymaking that not only is going to be, I think is going to be, I think very grounding to state water planning, but also, you have other states that are looking at Arizona. And when we're talking about the negotiations along the Colorado River, you have upper basin states that are looking at exactly what is Arizona doing. Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, those upper basin states. There is active and ongoing, and sometimes, very, very, I wouldn't say volatile, but, I think very boisterous negotiations between the upper basin states and the lower basin states. And I think for Arizona, I think, that ag to urban bill is going to go a long way to show that Arizona is serious about conservation and being responsible in their water management planning and use.
Thank you. I think I'm going to indulge myself in one question about desal before we get to the end here, because we're unfortunately running low on time. I think I'll just say broadly, do we think that desalination is a viable option as an augmentation project in Arizona? And anyone who wants to speak to that is welcome to. I will force one of you to. Yes.
Go for it.
Ron.
Well, I think it needs to be considered, certainly, but not only in desalination of ocean water. We have a lot of brackish water throughout the state, especially in the northern parts of the state, where this water could be treated so that it's usable as a good source of water supply. So I'm really open to continuing looking at desalination in more ways than one.
Thank you.
I guess if I can go real fast, I guess since I brought that up,
Please.
right? But I think it's more of that brackish water as well. That opportunity there. I mean, we have opportunities potential in our community on the west side of our reservation, but also there's an opportunity there. There's the Yuma desalination plant as well. Potentially maybe looking at that as an opportunity for a significant amount of potentially to desalinate water as well. So I think that is, again, that could be an important tool in our toolkit moving forward.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, yes, it's a viable solution, but we're not going to know if we need how much we need from it, or have the tools or the money to invest in such a project if we don't have certainty on the Colorado River. And so that's just an extremely important thing for Arizona to then decide what type of augmentation projects are we going to invest in, because we need to know how much volume and how much it's going to cost, because desalination is extremely expensive, not only in cost to construct, but to operate with extreme power requirements, et cetera. So just there's a lot to consider with all these augmentation projects, and it's going to take a lot of investment from the state and from stakeholders.
Thank you. All right. I think it's just about time for us to close out here. And I do want to ask one last question, which is, what would you like the audience to take away from this discussion and, take with them going forward? And let's start this one in reverse order with Ms. Schoenig.
Yeah, I think there are solutions out there, and I think it's really important to remember to work together and to find those solutions. I think it's very easy to get stuck in it's really hard. Maybe there's not enough water, perhaps no growth, right? And so I think the key is for people to stay engaged and to continue looking for solutions while also being practical. So, on the topic of desal, yes, maybe it's a great solution for some places. It's probably not what you should plan on if you're a small rural community, right? Like the economics aren't going to pan out. So being practical in those solutions and continuing to ensure that we're protecting our freshwater resources and that we are looking for solutions for communities both urban and rural and the environment. So I think there are solutions out there, and we have to keep working towards them.
Thank you very much.
I think everyone has a part to play in this. It's all of our responsibility. And with that moving forward, the community has worked with both parties. We worked with the prior Governor Ducey's administration, and we're working with Governor Hobbs's administration. We're working, on both sides of the aisle. We're at a point where we have to meet the moment. And Arizona has always done that, has always, in some way, some form or fashion. For me, it was a trial by fire when I was, as a new governor and dealing with the drought contingency plan, the Arizona drought contingency plan, and the many meetings that we've had. Sometimes, knockdown, drag out fights in these public meetings as well. Those of you that have seen, but we got through it. We found pathways for the Gila River Indian community and other tribes. That was an opportunity for us to actually have a seat at the table. And when the tribes, 22 tribes here in Arizona, when at least for the Gila River Indian community, and of course the Tohono Nation down in southern Arizona and the Colorado River Indian tribes, when we had seats at the table, and with those tribal leaders and our water teams, we actually brought innovation to the table because of our water settlements and our water rights. We were able there was there were several points that there were impasses. And when when we had an opportunity to be at the table, we actually we had the resources, meaning the water, but we also had very innovative practices that we were able to bring to help to move this forward. Where it was amazing for the Arizona DCP how it got passed, just such a bipartisan fashion. So I think this is what we have, I think, before us as well. How we're going to meet how we need and how we need to meet the moment. There is no other option. Failure is not an option at this point, as we're looking towards both within the state, but also in the larger basin as well.
I would just say continue to follow your curiosity with water. Obviously, you all here listening in and here in the room are already very curious and want to learn more. Reach out to your local utility. Try to find out if your utility bill went up. Find out why. Ask questions. Figure out what your personal water budget should be for your home. And just be part of the conversation with your local leaders and regional leaders, and just continue to pay attention and ask questions. And in order to really understand your part in it, it's absolutely going to be collaborative. There are absolutely solutions to this, but that's going to take tough choices, not just on a personal level, but at the leadership level especially. So feel free to reach out. I'll be available afterwards, and just reach out, find out who serves your water, right? Who is your utility if you don't already know. So just follow that curiosity.
Well, I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't recognize the importance of water to our economies, no matter where you're from, and our quality of life as well. Arizona is not a water-rich state by any means, and as every year goes by, we're realizing it more. We have some challenges ahead of us as water providers and water planners for the entire state. But we've got a lot of really qualified people that are involved in this, and I think that with their knowledge, with the input from interested stakeholders, just like all of you in the audience today, we're gonna make it through this in Arizona.
So I said that was the last question. I think I lied because we have a little bit more time and I want to use everything we've got. So I'm going to follow up again and say, when it comes to people knowing about water and being curious, how do we educate the broader public? Because, unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't know that much about water and maybe don't know that they should know more about water. So what should we do in terms of outreach and education? And let's start this time with Mr. Doba and go back the way we came.
I laugh when you mention that because just in talking to my neighbors in my subdivision, it's amazing some of the comments that I hear about their knowledge of assured water supplies and things like that, which don't really impact any of us that are not in active management areas. It's tough how to educate them. You know, public outreach by water providers certainly is important. It's something that they can do. They can probably do more of it than a lot of them do now, as far as uh, giving the public information about as was mentioned earlier, where does your water come from? How many of the people in the community actually realize where their water is coming from, or how that affects their the taste of the water that's coming out of the tap that particular day versus a day a month ago. That changes from time to time, but it's it's a hard question to answer. It takes work, and it's going to take work on the part of the water providers, I think, to inform their customers. And they're going to have to do more than just put something in their water bill inside the envelope, because half the time people just toss those out anyway. So we've got to get their attention in a positive way, one way or the other.
So we've been, as a municipal provider, we've been trying to do more and more outreach. It's interesting. We've done annual workshops and we just aren't getting in-person attendance to those. And so, thankfully we have a great Office of Communication Engagement in Gilbert that is looking at creative ways to use social media to get just little videos out there, just little snippets to get everyone's attention. Our attention spans are diminishing, so I guess that's how we're going to try to reach out to the community and just kind of pique their interest. We're working on just one right now, like a little short video that's a trend that we're going to make it about water. And so those are just the ways. Everyone's on their phone, right? So just try to ping them as much as possible in that way. And then just adapting technology. I mentioned AMI. Giving people access on their phones of how their water use is. I have a smart irrigation controller. I can literally from here turn on my sprinklers or turn on my drip irrigation. And so just those little ways that are adapting to how people engage in their life these days, and making water part of that is critical. So, but again, that takes a lot of investment. Gilbert has been able to have that investment, having a larger community here in the valley, but again, that might be harder for some of the rural communities.
Um, I think our universities, our state universities, have a large part to play, and they, they have, I think, some great resources as well, like the John Kyle Center. Sarah Porter has done an excellent job down at U of A and NAU as well. I think they have a responsibility, and they've, by and large, I think they have done a lot, and I think it's about spreading that education. For the all politics is local, right? So for the community, I'm constantly having to keep my community, and that's a responsibility for my people. In regards to, and they are very attuned to our water, because that's our namesake, the Gila River Indian community. So I just got a call from my elders, and they're saying, Governor, we hear a lot about about the drought, and we hear about the Colorado River, about groundwater. We want you to do a presentation to our elders. And also last week we had our youth conference, and so the youth also want me to talk to them and to educate them about their water as well. So I definitely am always questioned from in my community about our water, from our elders to our youth and all in between as well. I mean, that's a responsibility as an elected leader, and especially as a tribal leader. And I take that to heart, and I think a more informed citizenry, is really helps to support, as was said, helps to support and to support the the political will of elected leaders, those in important decision making capacities, to make and to support responsible water management and water policy and water law. Thank you.
Yeah, Sarah Porter with the Kyle Center has to deal with me a lot, asking water questions and clarifying things before I publish any articles on water. But yes.
Great. I think, just to add on to all of those great points, I think it is, how do we make sure our elected officials are educated and informed? How can we make sure there's funding for people to do that education? So continuing to provide that funding through the Kyle Center and also the Water Resources Research Center down in the southern area. There's a couple kind of school programs, Project WET, if you've heard of that. That's an awesome program where youth are educated in the 4th grade and 6th grade on the water cycle, having those water festivals, and that all comes through the university system. So again, continuing to invest in that and recognizing the importance of funding for infrastructure to get projects done, right? We always want things on the ground, but then sometimes we're not as excited to invest in outreach and education, and we need to make sure that we're doing that as well and that people have good resources to turn to. So just want to highlight some of those. I think, the idea of create short videos, different ways to educate and reach out to folks is of course important, and I think something we can all work to do more of.
Yes, thank you. And listen to your local radio station. It's free. All right, well, thank you all so much. I'm going to ask the audience to give a round of applause for our panel. We're really grateful to have you here. Thanks again. And thank you to Chad for letting me host this. I had a lot of fun. Feel free to stick around. I'll be here. And if any of our panelists are willing to, I think maybe some of the audience members want to talk to you one-on-one. And that's it. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.